Sure.
Okay, welcome everybody. This is the Rutland Town Planning Commission for November 18th, 2021. Let's start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag
of
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you for joining us. And we have tonight in the room, we have Howard Burgess and Annie McBain, and myself, and on the Zoom call and Zoom connection, we have Sherman Hunter, we've got Mary Beth Poley, and Norm Cohen. So that means everyone can vote. Be 6 of us, yeah.
Perhaps the record should show that a regular member, Dana Peterson, is not here, and that alternate Norman Cohen will be voting. So it's very clear.
Okay. There are a couple regular people that aren't going to be here, Norm, so.
Yes, that's correct as well. Yes.
Okay. All right. First up, approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Anybody want to add anything? There's quite a few things to put in announcements and news, but we should be okay the way this is written up. Ready for the question? All those in favor of the agenda as written, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. No public here tonight, so we can skip over that and go into new business and take a look at the budget for the next fiscal year, starting in July of 2022. I think a copy was sent out of last year's budget and actuals, this year's budget, and then we left blank a proposal for the next fiscal year. So far, this fiscal year, it's almost halfway over, we have spent $157.77. And that's in line 263, the Planning Commission salaries and expenses. So even for that, that's kind of low. We have talked a little bit about maybe putting a little bit more into the legal line, the 261, just in case we need it for the upcoming ordinance work we'll be doing. We might want to push that up to 2,000 from 1,000. I'm not sure if we need to add to any. Yeah, Norm. Go ahead.
It shows no expense for legal at this point in time, and I'm just curious, when you call Kevin Brown, as you have done on a number of occasions and reported back to us, does he bill the town or does he bill us?
Well, hopefully us when it applies to us.
Never bills the town. We get one bill from Kevin Brown for everything he does. So like when you called me the other day, we won't get that bill till December. So when we get the December bill, then we'll apply it to that. But one bill a month. So
Yeah, okay.
Right. But it's a portion between us and the select board. Is that correct?
For that call, are you asking?
Well, if I understood Bill correctly, we get one bill for all his service. The town gets one bill for all his services. And then it's broken out between the select board and the planning commission and anybody else that's called him.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yes,
Is
and
that-
we can work that out. I mean,
But
Bill can probably do it by himself, just knowing what's going on.
no, but my concern is that as far as I know, we've engaged him on several things during the year and I see no expense yet.
I don't think we have since July. I haven't talked to him
Oh, okay. I thought you had, excuse me.
since July, the beginning of July. No. So, yeah, so the select board's going to be starting work on the budget, probably their next meeting, definitely by
All the
December.
departments are done.
Okay,
Just general is left, so it's planning commission, listers, and that's about it. That's all we have left to do.
yeah. So, so we got the legal, the regional commission is a combination of the annual dues we pay to the Rutland Regional Planning Commission and, the salary, if there's someone who is representing the town at the commission. Right now, there isn't. That person has resigned, so there's an opening there, if you know of anyone. And there's also an opening on the Transportation Advisory Committee at the Regional Planning
Primary
Commission.
and alternates are open.
And then the next line, 263, are the salaries for, the members here and any expenses. Miscellaneous, I'm not quite sure what we put in there, but miscellaneous stuff. Advertisings for, the notices, the public hearings and things like that. And then consulting fees, if we use Andres, Teresa, or somebody like that, that would go in that line item. So if
Have
it's
we not
okay
had
with
any
everyone,
Consulting fees this year? I mean, this fiscal year?
for which one, Sherman?
Consulting fees, I thought we incurred some consulting fees, but I'm not sure it's since July.
We haven't since July.
Okay,
The only thing and you don't see it here, I called Carrie and got the most recent, budget to actuals. The only thing we've spent is on 263, and that was the $157.77.
So was
it's-
the,
I don't have that.
oh, sorry.
It's not there. It's not there. I got that after we sent this out.
Okay,
I just have a question. So for the consulting fee for the website, was that on the 2020-21?
that was what I was.
That was the spring, so.
Yes,
Mm-mm. Okay.
yes, but there was, it actually came out of Byron's budget, most of it.
Stormwater budget, yeah.
The
even
stormwater
better.
budget,
Okay.
because that's what the select board said, that's for everything stormwater related. So he actually ended up paying for that.
So what we're doing going forward is there is no more highway stormwater budget. It doesn't exist anymore. It's just the town has a stormwater budget because it didn't make sense to
Right,
break them up.
right.
It was more confusing than anything. So now there is a general stormwater budget item and no highway stormwater budget item.
Okay, so like if there was another Andres a fee for putting together, a map like that,
Yeah.
you would decide that goes into that.
Okay, so what this does not show is expenses from July 1st to date.
Right, because there aren't any.
Really?
Essentially, there aren't any. There's just a few for just a little bit for salary for commission members. And so we don't need to, definitely don't need to worry about those expenses. What we need, what I would like is some marching orders to go to the select board and say, these are the numbers we want for these line items next year. And so I'm proposing as we go down from 261 down, 2,000, 2,000, 4,000, 500, 2,000 and 500. I mean, if you look at the 2020, 2021 actuals.
Yep.
If that was the last budget year, we don't come close to spending our budget anyway.
Yeah.
I don't have
And
a
if,
total
and
right
if
now.
if it turned out that we wanted to go over budget in some area, we'd probably have a very good reason for doing so. We
Yeah.
can justify it.
Yeah, especially if it was ordinance related. And it looks like, if we use Kevin Brown or if we use Vermont League of Cities and Towns, their legal help there, that will, both of them will incur some costs.
Yeah.
So that's why I boosted up 261. So those numbers sound okay?
Sure. Fine with me.
What's the number? I didn't hear that. For legal?
It would be 11,000 total.
11,000 and not 1,000?
If you,
He was on the phone. He missed the whole rundown.
okay, so it goes, Norm, starting at 261, 035, 261. We're proposing 2,000 there instead of 1,000. So
Okay.
that's the only one that changes.
Okay, I heard I heard something different, so that's why I raised the question. Thank you. And everything else is the same.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think so. Okay, okay,
We can do a motion on that.
go ahead.
Move to accept the budget as amended. I'll second it.
The proposed budget.
Yes, proposed budget as amended. I'm sorry.
And I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Hi.
Opposed? Okay. All right. So down to old business. And we'll start with the last select board meeting, which was the 9th. And we went to them asking if they would make a final decision on whether to put a conservation commission on the March ballot. That was turned down by a 3-1 vote and 1 abstention. So that's not going to happen. And then we also talked to them about ordinances. And I brought the list that we came up with our last meeting. So there would be 3 new ones that we would start with. These would be our priorities. A noise one, one with concerning livestock, and another new one about building permits and meetings with us, the Planning Commission. And then we would review the public assembly, the public nuisance one, ATV, and the permit tracking, existing ones. And they were fine with that. They wanted to hear a little bit more about the livestock before we went any further with that one. So I need to do a little research on what other towns have done with that. There was some discussion of, about, we don't want to come down too hard on the people who are still in farming and making their living, boarding horses or things like that. But we also want to take into consideration, what some of the other concerns might be from residents about those operations, and, whether there's some environmental concerns to look at.
Barbara, I'm sorry, I just missed. And what category was that under? I missed that part.
So there's 3 new ones.
Right.
Noise, livestock, whether we want to put some limitations on the number of livestock, and then building permits, doing something so that we hear earlier what people are doing.
Yep.
Along that. And then there's 4 that we review that are existing. Public assembly, public nuisance, ATVs, and permit tracking. And so they're good with that. So we've got our marching orders now. And I'm thinking, so I've got to do some more research on livestock, but I think, we might as well start with noise. And I think, I don't know what you folks think, but maybe a smaller group that initially works on this and then comes back to the larger group might be a little bit easier.
I think that, well, I think we need to look first at what the draft looks like that you obtained from somebody else and then decide if it's suitable for small committee. I generally, I agree with you. I think that makes sense. Break off. We've done smaller committees a couple of times and they've been very effective, I thought, productive.
Yeah, they have. And I was thinking, once we get into December, we're probably not going to have much other business to be attending to. I mean, we do get things from time to time, but they probably won't be getting any subdivisions or anything substantive like that.
Yep.
So December and January might be a good time to work through these. And when I was talking to Kevin about a couple of things last week, he thought that a lot of things could fit under public nuisance. It's very prescribed what we can do by ordinance. And they fall under just a few categories. And public nuisance seems to collect most of the things that people want to address. So even if we start with noise, there might be some other things that we end up putting into that same new ordinance. Maybe even the livestock.
I think the idea of having 2 or 3 people look at it initially to understand it before we bring it before the group would just save us some time at the group meeting. And we could then discuss it and probably have a better understanding of it as we discuss it that way. I hesitate to say that because I'm trying not to volunteer.
Sounds like a chairman speaking to me.
Yeah, it's so a place to start is to look at 24 VSA 2291. And that is 24 VSA 2291. That's the list of regulatory powers that municipalities can take advantage of. And then VLCT has already sent us a public nuisance model template.
I don't have a copy of that. Did we receive it at one point?
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been probably a couple months now, but we can resend it out.
Be nice.
That would be good.
Okay. And are there any volunteers to start this process?
Can I ask a question just before we get there? What can we just talk a little bit about what we would like to see as a result of this initial review?
Well, we want to do something about noise because that's what Bill hears the most complaints about. So if yeah.
I'm sorry, Barbara, I didn't mean that. I mean, if we have 2 or 3 people look at it, what would we want them to come back with? I don't think we'd want them to come back with a revision of what it is, and I just trying to get an understanding of maybe that is what we're looking for. But I thought we'd come back with something like a good understanding of what it is and what that committee thinks is missing. Maybe I'm just trying to put some parameters around what we would do as initial small review.
Bill, do we have a noise ordinance now? Okay, that's what I thought. So we don't have anything now. We're starting from
Right.
scratch on
Right.
that one.
Yep.
And so VLCT has already come up with some language that would pass muster.
We
Yeah.
have a model policy on objectionable noise.
And so I thought this group could take that, also look at what they can do with the statute I mentioned, and see how much of the VLCT model will cover of what we're thinking of. And then go back to the larger group and say, this is what we found. Here's some language. Do we want to add anything else to it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. No, I'd like to work on that,
Okay, great.
definitely. And I just asked Bill, what kind of complaints get generated mainly? I mean, the bulk of them. Like from household to household, electronic noise,
No,
meaning music,
vehicles and shooting. Are usually the
vehicles
ones-
and shooting.
loud vehicles and guns. That's what I get the most of.
The shooting is gonna be a tough one then, huh?
Could be.
Could be.
Yes.
The only, I think I mentioned this at one of the other meetings. All these ordinances are gonna come down to how effective they are by their enforcement.
Yep. Yep.
So
Exactly.
I will say that the board is not really gonna be set up to be able to deal with individual complaints. So the enforcement process should probably be discussed early for any of them, but who's gonna be responsible for it? Because if it's gonna be the police department, it's gonna be a tough sell, because they are out straight.
Yeah.
They've got 4 of them. We now have 2 constables. They just
Right.
appointed another constable. And they can handle some of that, but they are not full-time. They are like 1 day a week constable. So we need to be careful with that. So, I mean, we can write the best ordinance in the world, but the enforcement is too big of a process.
Yeah.
It's not gonna matter.
It's the same thing like with cell phones. And we've been dealing with cell phones,
Yep.
talking with cell phones for years now. And the police they just can't control it.
Nope.
It's out there and it's gonna go on and on and on. And we're not gonna be able to control a lot of
if
these
they are-
things.
You mean like texting while driving? So,
If-
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have like when we had the fireworks, issues and there was fines involved with that, there were civil penalties. And the chief of police said, it's a civil ticket that doesn't go anywhere. Like there's no enforcement behind it. There's no muscle behind it. There's nothing. Because unless the town wants to go to court to enforce it, he's like, there's no civil penalties civil tickets don't really carry much weight.
Mhm.
So the penalty side of it and the enforcement side of it is really gonna be key. I mean, we can write the best ordinance against noise, but if the enforcement is difficult, it's not gonna matter. So.
Yeah.
Barbara, may I make a suggestion?
Sure.
In part based on what Bill said, but also in part thinking about what comes before us most often. Would it make some sense to start with a building permit ordinance? That might have the most immediate impact on us and on the things we see most often, as opposed to a noise ordinance or a livestock ordinance, which inherently may be more difficult to put together and to implement. But a building
Yeah.
permit, we've all talked a little bit about how people can start without us knowing it. And that kind of thing. And it just may be something that has a real practical impact.
So you want to see results.
Well, I think also in terms
We
of
get a lot
what,
of questions, we get a lot of inquiries on, I get a lot of phone calls on, we're starting a project or we're doing a remodel and I can't find your zoning ordinance. I'm like, well, it's because there isn't one. And,
Yeah,
you know, then the informational building permit only applies if they're increasing the square footage outside. It doesn't apply to anything inside. So, you know, it's very specific in what it covers. And so, you know, but we do get a lot of questions on building permits, mainly because every single person is surprised at how lean it is.
right.
Well, the other thing I've always thought is the building permit ordinance in the city of Rutland acts, one, for regulatory purposes, but two, it alerts the listers or assessor in Rutland as to increased value of property for tax purposes.
Their zoning triggers that.
I'm sorry?
Their zoning ordinance is what triggers their building permit. And you're right, but whenever I get a building permit, I give a copy to the listers.
But we don't get building permits on many, many things. We don't
We
issue
get them
them.
on, well, yeah, I get them on, when people call and ask, I tell them if their project needs one or not, and they send it in. Like, I just got a call today from Hannaford. They're doing a remodel, and she said, I have 50 pages of remodel documents. Where do I send them? I'm like, nowhere. We don't need them. So, you know, but if they're expanding out the back of the store, then we need it. So it's a confuse. People don't understand, you know, people just don't know what we need, what we don't need.
Well, to me, that's a perfect example. If they're doing a 50-page remodel and we have no, I don't know, no say over it, and I put that in quotes because, you know, then Howard doesn't get alerted. That property has increased in value, and the town doesn't get its taxable share. Now, that may be further complicated by the fact that we don't have a zoning ordinance, but maybe we can, I mean, that's where I would start. I mean, it's up to Barbara. That's just my suggestion.
Yeah, so I think we have to look at what we could do without zoning, what statute allows, and keep in mind that with this building permit ordinance that we thought of a while ago, we primarily wanted to improve the communication and get people in front of us, just letting us know what they're doing, and add to the paperwork as much as we can, you know, the paperwork that we can file and keep track of these things. But there's going to be a little work in what we can do legally with this topic. But yeah, I mean, it could be a great place to start, Norm. Is that what others think? Start with that one instead?
Sure, just because it has the most to do with what we're doing. So maybe a good place to start because we know maybe a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I like Norm's reasons also for starting there.
Or
Yeah, by taking on just one like that, we could probably do a better job, just concentrate on that one and try to do what we can for that, right? If we take on like 3 of them here, we're not gonna probably accomplish a whole lot, but I'm in agreement to doing that. Let's just take one and see how it goes.
okay.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Building,
Yeah, and
Certainly if we get more people, bring more things under the umbrella of needing that informational permit that we have now, it'll certainly be better for the listers and give the town an idea of, you know, of what's going on. We certainly should be getting a permit for remodeling, for substantial remodeling.
yeah, and usually the definition of substantial, at least in the flood world, is 50%. The value increases 50%. I don't know. I don't know. Other worlds would-
that. I've never, but I don't think it would have to be that high myself.
We could say what it is. We could say, you know, use that terminology and actually put some numbers behind it.
without zoning, we're really limited to what we can really do with
Right.
digging too deep into this.
So what I was told when I started asking questions about that permit was that because we don't have zoning, we can't require building permits. So Kevin or someone had drafted this permit tracking ordinance, which then allowed us to take the informational building permit, which literally is no cost, no approval. They send it in and they're done. There's no review, there's no nothing. So what I was told early on was that because there's no zoning, we can't have a building permit. This is as good as we can get. So whether that's true or not, I've never really gone down that rabbit hole. So it may be the best we can have, but like you said, we need to look at the statute to see what it allows us to say, can we do it or not?
Right.
So would the regulatory powers help us with that, with determining that, Barbara, or some
Well, the
other?
regulatory, we'll have to pay Kevin Brown, the town attorney, or go to VLCT and pay them. What they're willing to do is share with us the templates, the models of ordinances and such that they've come up with. After that, if we want to like tailor it more to Rutland Town or whatever, they'll start charging for that legal help.
Well, I think we ought to proceed, as systematically as we can and as carefully as we can. And it seemed to me, based on the discussion this evening, we need to look at 24 VSA 2891.
2291.
2291, yes, my writing, excuse me. And get the templates from VLCT, and maybe if you can find, or VLCT can give us a couple of examples of other towns which have building ordinances, permit ordinances, but don't have zoning. That's a place where we can begin. And if you want to do it by a small committee first, that might make some sense. So we don't spin our wheels and waste time at the regular meetings. And, and then we will be informed, from the ground up.
Okay. So, anyone want to work with Andy on this one?
I'll work with Andy.
Wonderful.
Great. Okay, so I will get in touch with VLCT initially, and then send you anything that they have, and then I'll resend the public nuisance just to send that back out. And you folks can go from there.
Yeah, can we see what Kevin
See if-
Brown,
yeah.
if he drafted that, what we're using now?
I don't know where it came from.
Yeah, I can check with him too.
And he might have some information. That firm does a lot of municipal work. And he may have some information from other towns that could help us.
It was quite interesting. The town, way back, probably in the 80s and 90s, they had building permits and they used to charge a small fee for them. But then I think it was when the Diamond Run Mall came in like 94, 95, there was a lawsuit, I believe. And that killed the building permits. And from that point on, Kevin Brown's outfit just said, leave it alone. And really, there was a lot of discussion from time to time of what can we do with building permits? And we kept being told really nothing. So what we got now has been a big step up, because we haven't had anything for many, many years. We haven't had any permits at all, but there was a real sticky issue. Of course, Kevin would be a good person to talk to. He wasn't the one that was on board at that time, but it was his firm that was,
I think it was, yeah, my guess is it was Mark Sperry. Oh, from the same firm.
Bren, yeah,
And
I'm sorry.
what was the,
it doesn't matter. But
what was the connection, Howard, between the Diamond Run Mall and getting rid of building
they
permits?
were charging, I think they were charging a fee for a certain percentage of what the estimated cost was going to be. And the Diamond Run Mall ended up as I recall, was a big number.
Mm.
And that, of course, that was back at the time when there was class action lawsuits against the town with businesses, when we hadn't done a reappraisal in 30 years and all this other stuff. And there was a lot going on. And it was sort of in that
Right.
time frame. And I remember the town had to actually refunded a lot of money that was paid for these building permits. All a homeowner had to do, or a business had to do, was request it from the town, and the town would give it back to them. So basically what they said was the building permit that we had was not legal. It was not legal. And I think it was a court case that put it to bed.
Mm.
Somehow we got it going again now. And it's been very helpful what we've got. But, I'm not sure if I've got it
So
exactly
we
right.
put something new in since then.
This year, this has only been what, Bill, for maybe a few years, 2-3 years at the most.
Yeah, I think so. I have a
Yeah, this is quite
read on it.
quite new.
And this is the permit tracking ordinance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This hasn't
We-
been around very long, but a few years.
Well, we would need whatever committee, or Andy and I guess, would need that also as a basis a place to start.
They're all online. They're all
Oh,
online.
Bill's got them online. Under ordinances.
Sam, can I just ask a question here?
Yeah.
In proceeding with this, rather than getting ourselves in the building permit muddle immediately, what if we found some other way to describe it? It may end up being a building permit, but is it a building notice for tax purposes or for town records or something like that? And if it turns out we have to call it a building permit, we will, but we wouldn't get the pushback initially if we did our homework without saying, hey, we're looking at building permits and what do you think of it? From even the attorney, when we describe to him what we want, can we say it in a different way, that we're not looking for a building permit? We want notification that there's going to be something built or modified, and we want that information to be entered into the town records. So, I mean, in effect, it is a building permit, but if we stay away from the language, we can get something done, at least getting something started.
Yeah, that and a permit kind of connotes that there's going to be enforcement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which there won't be, most likely.
I think the goal there should be that we want to get the umbrella as big as we can. So that.
Yep.
So that we know just basically everything, and includes that when construction is going on, that increases value.
Well,
Town records
What's our-
and property tax purposes, we need the information.
what is our goal with whatever we call it? I think we need to understand it better.
Well, why don't you and Andy work on that?
And come
Okay.
back to us with that.
I have a pretty
Tell
good
us what
idea
to go
what our
with.
goal should be, I think, and
Are you,
And come
Andy?
back to us.
Andy, are you going to Florida this winter?
not till January. But no, we should be substantially, I would think we'll be substantially done with. Well, I don't think there's a lot we can do, to be honest with you. I mean, we just have to find the wording to, as I said, make the umbrella as wide as we can. And it'll still be no fees. It's just having people come in and
Yep.
and fill out a form so that the listers in the town know what's going on.
And maybe appear before us, just,
Possibly
and,
true.
and maybe there's a dollar limit for that, you
Well-
know, or something.
The thing is, we won't have any teeth. I mean, we can't deny it, so
No.
that's just the rule.
But
But if
it
we
always,
we
it
worked on it,
always,
Hold on, Sherman.
go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, if we work on it, depending on how we do it, one of the consequences of not giving us all the information could be something attached to the first property tax bill, some, I don't know, some late fee, or I'm not sure how we'd word it.
Mm.
I don't know if that's legal or not, but the consequence of not giving us all the information and our not knowing that the property tax should increase should be maybe a financial consequence to the owner.
Yeah.
Just throwing ideas around.
Yep. It's something to check out. Yep. Norm, do you have something else?
Well, I did, and now it's slipped my mind. Oh, I know. Excuse me. It always was of interest that, and I never really appreciated it until both Byron and the fire chief came and talked a little bit about access roads to properties and coming into town roads and how wide the access roads needed to be for the police or the fire's fire department to get to these buildings that are, off the main, either off the beaten track or off the main road or whatever. And it may be we can look at the highway ordinance and somehow integrate what we do with public safety. But Andy and I can talk about that. I'd like somebody else on the committee. I think we need more than Andy and I. That's just my thought, Barbara. It's your call. But
We need a line item on the committee for travel to Florida.
yes, yes, in the budget.
Yes, on the budget.
Well, let's see if any of the members are not here tonight are interested. I'll ask them. See if
I
we can
think
get
if-
another.
I think Andy's terrific because he's been around this thing for a long time. And it's got some history. I'll chime in, and then I just remember when Sherman and Jerry and I worked together on I've forgotten what it was, but it really worked out well. I mean, that was a real shining moment in getting our heads together. So
Okay. We'll work on that. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Andy and
thank
Norman.
you.
All right, Andy brought to our attention the Supreme Court ruling, Snowstone is pretty much the name of it, on 1 acre development. And so I talked to Kevin about that, and he wasn't aware of it. I mean, the select board wasn't aware of it either, the lawyers on that group either. But Kevin said, it is what it is. If development does not take up a full acre, no matter what the size of the parcel is, it can go under the radar of Act 250. And of course, Act 250 is all we really have as a non-zoning town to regulate things like this. But he did have some other advice. Make sure that we aggregate all of the land that's going to be used for any project, not just go with what they say they're using. Include any access, whatever land we used up for that, stormwater projects, a pond or, whatever might use up more land than you think it is. So just aggregate all of that and just double check all the contractual rights, that the easements are all good there. Whether there's any null agreements with retained property, whether there's an accepted deed. So just to do our homework a little bit more than we might normally do. with the development. But this is the law of the land right now.
The thing is that we won't ever see it. Because somebody will buy a parcel of say 5 acres, stake out 0.99 acres of it. And at that point, they just start work. And they don't need to tell us about it. And Act 250 will do nothing. As I was recently involved personally in a case where we took over where a parcel has a 2-point-something acre parcel had commercial development on it. And that's where I found out about this. They said the footprint of the commercial development was less than an acre. We won't touch it.
You know, example of that is, you know, a short stop gas station up by the Home Depot, that little gas station, that's exactly what was there and what they did. It was just under an acre when they put that gas station there, and nobody, you know, V-Tran, nobody could stop them. They just went in, and that was key to it, keeping it under an acre.
And so,
Yeah.
my thought was that I would hope that, given this information to the select board, that they would allow us to move forward, and instead of, in my opinion, playing with ordinances, let us do what we need to do and get and draft the zoning document. Because then when we have zoning, we can charge impact fees. And certainly we're missing out on a huge amount of revenue in this town. And revenue we should be getting to offset infrastructure.
So, yeah. They had not heard about it, so I'll, in the next meeting next week, I'll, you know, tell them what Kevin said and that it's for real. And see where that goes. There is not the support there for zoning yet, but they talk about it each time. And they talk about the drawbacks of not having it.
The thing is that, you know, look at the Thomas parcel up there. If somebody got really creative, they could do a whole lot right up there and literally destroy that side of the road with commercial development, and we'd never have a look at it, nor would Act 250.
True.
If,
So
excuse
Barbara,
me, if anybody would like a copy of the Snowstone opinion, send me an email. I've got it. I'll scan it and just send it to you. And you'll get once you get through the legal, I can say this now, the legal gobbledygook, now that I'm retired. And, you know, all the stuff they have to go through a decision like this. And you'll see what it says. It's really not very much different than what Andy and Barbara have said. But it just might give you a better understanding of where the court's coming from. So I'm happy to send it out if anybody wants it.
Okay, yeah, I think it's been out there in circulation. Sherman?
yeah, I just was going back to what you said. I guess when you spoke to the attorney, he said to look at other parcels that are being used.
No, he just said, you know, if you have a chance, you know, in this case, they came, you know, it was pretty close. It was like 0.94 or 96 acres. It was right under. So he said, you know, just make sure, you know, there aren't some things that might be missing there if you have the opportunity.
So that does include the parcels that they used for construction or what about right of way if it goes through someone else's property? Would it include stuff like that, or is that not part of?
Yeah, I think that's what he meant by access. Yeah,
Okay, so all of that.
yeah.
All right.
Everything they would need to make that a functional commercial operation or.
But is it only during operation or during construction also? That's really what I'm getting to.
It's what the footprint would be, the lasting footprint.
Okay, all right.
They would need.
Yep.
Yeah. And, you know, don't just look at, you know, Kevin said, if you have the opportunity, don't just look at the building. See if there's some things that they're leaving out to keep it under an acre.
Okay.
And, that was the best he could offer, given the ruling from the Supreme Court. So that's that. Andy, with the zoning, we
I
can
realize it.
just, yeah, I know, we can keep talking about strategy with the group. Kevin brought up the vote, was it on town meeting day? He brought that one in 2010. He looked it up. It was a ballot item. He helped draft it. And it was an advisory vote.
Right.
But he remembered it was a pretty good majority of people. And, he's kind of frustrated too that we don't have zoning. It makes everyone's job here harder.
I think that was right after I was appointed to the planning commission. If I remember right, it was 77%. If you took the three categories. There was three different categories: minimal, needing something, and wording, and zero. But the people that wanted none were just a small minority. So I'm totally surprised we haven't gained traction with this by now. And I somewhat was hoping with this that but I suppose what we'll take is going to be a particular piece of development that occurs somewhere that is so abhorrent that then that'll spur people into action.
If Jim Hall was here, he would probably bring up something else that Kevin Brown mentioned, which was at that point, they then did a model zoning bylaw, but it came in at 130 pages. And so it just sat there and ran out the clock for, the clock that they had to, do something about it, or it just, falls off the table. So it was too big, and it doesn't have to be that big.
No, I don't think so.
My boss, the Regional Planning Commission, zoning is one of his specialties, and he's done zoning light in a number of communities where it's more like 50 pages or could even be less. And it doesn't, one of the arguments the select board uses is it's more government, it's going to be more costly for Rutland Town. But, it could be done with part-time. It probably could be done with some part-time people. And there's a number of towns in our area that use like the same zoning administrator. He works one day a week in a certain town. So.
Wallingford had that for a while.
We'll go from there.
Well, there was one fellow who did 3 towns. I've forgotten his name.
Jeff Biazuzzi?
Yes. Biazuzzi,
yeah, it was
right.
up to 6 towns at one point.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's more days in the week than more work days, but.
Well, I like the, you said something that touched me is zoning light. That might be something to think about, but I think Andy and I need to get started on building permit. And if we find out we're with the consent of the full body that we're, not getting anywhere, then maybe we have to think about how to sell it as zoning light. The problem with the zoning ordinance is it's always full of compromises, and nothing suits. There's no one shoe fits all, and everybody can find something wrong and say I'm not. And it's a nightmare, but the more we sit back, the more difficult it is to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a general comment. Zoning Conservation Commission, as part of some of the research, talking with different people on the Conservation Commission, something I've been thinking about is some advice someone gave the select board isn't always supportive of, in whatever town, but select board members change. So, right now there isn't support for zoning, but I think if we kind of work on the pieces and the details in the ordinances, it'll at least help us later on, maybe a couple years down the road, if the political climate does change and there's more vocal residents that are calling for it.
Yeah, well put, well put.
In addition to that, I think that that the select board members could have a full workload now. I look at what they do and I wouldn't want to be responsible for that. And they have other responsibilities. It's not a full-time job. So to take on something else that's that big, let's just say big in terms of interest and involvement, and forgetting how much work there is, could just mean that much more time and be something that keeps them from wanting to dive into it.
Yeah.
I'm not excusing it. It's just what's going on now.
Mhm. And full disclosure, the 130-page zoning document that was, presented to the select board about 10 years ago, that came from the Regional Planning Commission. But we're beyond that now. We've seen the light, and we like light. Okay, moving down to the Pocket Park update. Let's see, there's a archaeological study still being done for GMP in its relicensing application for that application. That's about to wrap up, and it is looking right at that site around the falls and where we're thinking of the Pocket Park. So we're waiting for the results of that. It doesn't look like anything significant is going to come out of that, which is a good thing. And it looks like if that's the case, we can get a letter clearing something we can add to our files that says there is nothing significant there, and it should not be a problem in the future to put a park there. So we're hoping for that. Otherwise, trying to get GMP and the select board to sit down and start talking about, whether there's going to be a transfer of ownership of this parcel or some sort of easement. So that would be nice to have in this design. And still working with some of the indigenous groups and making sure I've got them all included. I think there might be as many as 4 that use that area. One of them is particularly specific about what they'd like to see at the site. So I'm trying to see if the others are as specific. And there was one other thing I was going to mention. I talked to the police chief, and there are some things, there's some suggestions he had about safety down there, signage that talks about no trespassing, and assigns it has to assign agents such as the police department to take care of that. So there's that. He suggested maybe a neighborhood watch group to kind of keep an eye on the property. And he also suggested that if there's any shenanigans down there, any graffiti, that type of stuff, that it's always best to clean it up immediately. You let it sit there and it just attracts more. So I don't have all those notes right with me, but I think that's the essence of what his suggestions were. And, you know, he said something about, he goes down there, especially now that we're talking about the pocket park. He just stops by every once in a while and he catches people who like flee as soon as they see him. But he also, there's a couple from New York City who have, one of them has parents, I think in Proctor, and they're up here a lot and they love going to the falls. So, I mean, they had lots of stories to him for him about the time they spend there. So we've got the police chief thinking about this park and thinking about how to make it work, I guess is the bottom line.
Can I share really quick?
Yeah.
I really think just the improvements that we would have there would make it much less likely to have the type of people that hang out there now hang out, you know, be more open, just kind of feel like a real park. But that's good to hear their feedback. And
Yeah. He does. He obviously, or it's not surprising that he sees some drug use going on there. And, you know, nighttime off hours is always going to be an issue and something to pay attention to. But he's got some ideas.
Certainly it's a plot that could be set up with video surveillance so easily
Yeah.
that, you know, that it really shouldn't, you know, once the trees are cut down, it's going to be a wide open area with plenty of places to put a pole up high, and I just wouldn't see that we'd have a problem there.
Yeah.
Are all the trees going to be cut down?
No.
No idea, but I'm sure that'll be opened up somewhat.
Yeah, the plan is somewhat is to at least get the invasives out of the way and make it look better.
Yeah.
It's you know, it's a pretty, some sections are really steep, and you know, some of that vegetation is kind of needed for erosion and that kind of thing.
I think you can't take down a tree now within 50 feet. That's over 3 inches, or
Yeah.
some is the rule, a strict rule about that without permitting. So
Yeah, there's some shoreline regulation with respect to that, as I understand it. I'm not
Yeah.
real familiar with it, but I understand that to be the case.
Okay.
before we
Yes.
move from the pocket park, can I just share just an idea for the future? So I know some of you maybe are involved with the creek path or have been in the past in Rutland City. And I was just reading the recent story in the paper where they're talking about the 5 segments. And I didn't realize there's going to be a segment that goes to that will end at the College of St. Joseph at the Rutland Community Center. And then it'll go all the way up to Georgetti with the existing sections of trail, and that they're also planning to build their own pocket park along the trail in the city along Meadow Street. So I think the college isn't very far from the pocket park that we're proposing. Obviously, this would be years down the road, but it might be a good idea to think about how we might extend a segment through Rutland Town to the pocket park and kind of tie together, since they're pretty close together. Just an idea. Obviously, we have plenty on our plates right now just at the pocket park, but maybe for the future, once it's built, just start thinking about that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was involved with the path for quite a while. I'm not actively involved in it now. And that segment you're talking about is segment 5, right at the beginning, just on the college side of the bridge. I call it the River Street Bridge, but it's a different, that's not, but the bridge at the end of River Street. There's a plan to build that, just to have an area where people can stand and look at the convergence of the 2 areas. And that's segment 5. And what's being worked on, today's focus, I think, was on segment 3. Yes, segment 3,
3 was not,
which
I thought it was 4. I was going to ask you, because I've read it a couple times and, we've had some conversation. I don't ever see a segment 3 mentioned. Maybe I missed something in the paper, but this is the one.
I listen, there's a, I'm not sure whether
This is all in the city.
Yes.
yes, it's all in the city. I'm not sure where one segment ends and the other, but the segment focused on today was either 3 or 4. And the big deal about that is that it crosses East Creek, and there's a bridge involved, and that's become expensive and complicated. And I'm not sure the number, Norm, I just keep thinking it's 3. And I think segment 4 has already been built. Segment 4 is once it gets across East Creek, it takes it to the bridge. That's done. That exists now.
All right. Well, I'll look at the article again. We can clear each other's head later off.
Mhm.
I think in the article that I was reading today, they're saying that they have a donor for the bridge and a donor for the pocket park. And it's like a naming, they bought the naming rights for it, but it didn't say if that covers the entire cost. So
I
probably,
think
I'm
someone
guessing
makes a
not.
donation to the bridge, and I'm not involved in it now, but my guess and my interpretation was that there's been a large donation in support of the bridge, which may or may not be the entire cost of the bridge. It's doubtful that it will be, because it's a lot.
Right, to cross the
And I
creek
think
of that size, yeah.
But that's nothing we're involved with. That's really a city project.
Yeah,
correct.
it's all in the city and,
And the connection is that it will be on the other side of Arter Creek once it heads toward the college. And it will be able to see something on that side also. But it's not, you're right, it's all in the city.
okay, let's keep an eye on it. I think you all received, well, I think it was today I sent it out, the Act 250 kind of opinion
Yeah.
about the Thomas Dairy land on Post Road and Velco's purchase of that land to expand their subdivision there.
Yep.
So, so far, we're not involved. They have an Act 250 permit that exists. And the opinion is that they will need to amend that to do what they want to do there. So that's what this is all about. It looks like there might be some archaeological things that will come into play as well in that amendment. Again, that doesn't involve us. And so we'll just keep an eye on this as it progresses. Meanwhile, some construction has started on that substation by Velco. They've got permits posted there and they're doing some work on their existing site. So hopefully this is not putting them too far behind this whole process, whatever is going on between the parties right now.
Yes.
And then I wanted to mention something about the wind project up on Grandpa's Knob. The developer was at the Regional Planning Commission meeting the other night, at a committee meeting of the Regional Planning Commission. And for the first time, Rutland Town was mentioned as a town that would be visually impacted. And they had a visual simulation of that. It's from the Boardman Hill Road. You can't see much. You can see, there's a direct shot right at the ridges where the tower, the turbine would be. It doesn't look like you'd see too much in the daylight. The nighttime, you might see when the turbine is lit up and the blades are going. You probably will notice something. They're still saying there's not going to be impact to most of the towns. So Rutland Town would now be the sixth town that would see this from one point or another. It looks like the most impact would be the Hubbardton battlefield. It would really see what's going on. For one thing, the wind turbine is going to be on the western side of the ridge. There's a communications tower there right now. And they're saying the turbine will be on the western side of that. And even though it's going to be a little bit taller than the communications tower, in dimensions, because it's down slope a little bit, they're going to be about the same height. So it's just going to be like a double tower there. One's just going to have 3 blades going around. So they're expecting quite a bit of generation there. It's a 1.5 megawatt project. It's going to be the blades are going to track with the wind, meaning that they will move with the wind direction. They're not going to be stationary. And their plans are to make it a living monument to honor America's first grid connected wind turbine project there back in the early 40s. The one that was put up and then blew down a couple years later. So the question, I guess, for us is, do we want the developer to come in and tell us a little bit more about this project and maybe ask if there are plans to do other visual simulations from Rutland Town, see if there are any other vantage points that would be, in sight, line sight of this. That's question. We've got, they are going to be, they are meeting with towns now. They have more analyses to do with engineers and I guess simulators and with GMP, and they're going to spend the next year doing that. And they expect by next November, they'll have an application ready to go to the state for a certificate of public good to get it going. And they're also, one more thing, sorry, Norm. The towns they've met with so far, they've got this sharing of project revenue approach or idea that they're posing to them. So it's Grandpa's Knob Community Solar, and they're saying the community solar is that the communities that are affected visually by this will get some of the proceeds of the generation. So maybe that's another thing we might want to ask them. Norm.
I guess my first question is, now this will not be physically constructed in Rutland Town, but be visible from Rutland Town, right? Is that
Yes,
correct?
it's actually, yeah, it's on Grandpa's Knob. And it's
Which-
actually in Castleton. There's like 3 towns that come to a point there. West Rutland, Ira's not far away, and Hubbardton's not far away in Castleton.
So if we ask them to come in, what statutory or regulatory authority?
We have
Do we-
none. We have none. This is a CPG that goes through the Public Utility Commission. If they decide it's good for the state, they have that prerogative. They will look at, since we have an enhanced energy plan, what we have for language in there. So it's not, we're so far out, Norm. I think it's more of an informational type meeting.
But
And
even so, just, I guess if we had to search for any authority, it would be our enhanced energy plan. to speak with them. There's no action we can take, but it's just bringing us up to date. And we
Well,
would have,
there's no action we can take because we don't know what they're really requesting yet. That, they won't have an application or even the 45-day notice until next fall, a year from now.
well,
So,
it might be good to have, just get a heads up. I think that makes sense. So,
okay,
Butterman.
okay. And the person who's doing the communications looked at our website, and for some reason he projected our next meeting is the 16th of December, when it's really the 9th. I do have, there are a couple other things, conflicts that I actually have on the 9th. Does the 16th work for folks? We always seem to get a grimace there from Sherman.
Well, I'm in something all week, the week of the 13th, and I think the 16th is in there. So
Hmm.
I think I can at least take part in some of it. I'm in
Okay.
a ski clinic all week, so I'm going to be having trouble walking.
then you'll definitely be available.
So yeah, so a couple questions there. It sounds like we might as well just have him in. And he's got a slideshow he can
Yeah.
show us about, Rutland town and the other towns. He can go through his little,
How long does it take? I mean, he's done it umpteen times. Is it half hour or something, or what?
oh yeah, 20 minutes, half hour, depending on questions. I'll have to brush up what we have in the enhanced energy plan. I think we just talk about industrial wind, like most of the plans around the region. This is not industrial. It doesn't quite make that mark. They're calling it commercial. It's pretty big. It will be generating quite a bit of power, but I think they'll probably argue it's commercial, and I think maybe that will be valid. So
So
it's, yeah.
is our meeting the 16th? Or the 9th?
Does that work for everyone?
Works for me.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
And then I was thinking we're right up against the holidays. Then we just go 3 weeks from the 16th, and that puts us after all the holidays. It would put us to January 6th or something like that.
Yep.
Okay. So the 16th and the January 6th. Okay. Oh, Pittsford can also see it. Their distance is about like hours from it. So
Do you know where that solar field is that was announced in West Rutland off from Boardman Hill? Where that's going? It was just a few days ago. There
Yeah,
was something in
right.
the paper.
right.
Yeah.
All I know is what was in the Herald, and it sounds like it's not down by the Castleton River and the interchange, but not far from there, up the hill a little bit. And that is a big solar
Yeah, it is a
project.
big one. Yeah. No, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I can find out. Okay,
Good. Yep.
okay.
I missed the date. Did we say January 6th we would go to?
In going to the 16th of December, skipping the 9th, which would be our next regular meeting, and going to the 16th, if we go 3 weeks after that, that puts us to January 6th as the meeting following that. So December 16th and January 6th, and then we'll start the cycle from there. We always sort of do this at the end of
Sounds
the.
good.
Okay, anything else? Anyone has for announcements? Okay, let's do the minutes from October 28th. like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
Okay.
I'll second.
I have some comments for a change.
We're so surprised, Norm.
I can be, for the right price, I can shut up. I'm easy to please.
Just kick them off the meeting.
If I don't have them, you will, so what's the difference? And Dana's not here, so I'm pinch hitting. I think one thing is that under our new rules of procedure, right at the beginning, I think it's best to indicate that both Mr. Hall and I were alternates.
We hadn't adopted the rules of procedure for this meeting yet.
I'm sorry, didn't you?
The rules of procedure, the new rules were not in effect yet for this
Oh,
meeting. We voted them
okay.
in this meeting.
Okay, thank you.
So at the beginning of the meeting, they were not in effect. So hold that thought.
That's
Norm.
one thing now. Okay.
On number 4, second page, says discuss the recent Supreme Court decision. Is that the Stone Ridge decision?
The snowstone. Mhm.
Snow, is that it?
Yeah.
It said the decision is expected to be appealed. I think that's incorrect. It might be expected to be re-argued,
That's what was said.
but there's
It
no
was
place,
what was said.
there's no place to appeal it from.
Right, but that's what was said, Norm.
Yeah, that
Well,
was the conversation. That was the thread of conversation.
Yep.
So I think we need to leave it in there. Because of that.
Okay, okay.
Because it wasn't corrected at the time, Norm.
Okay, I guess I didn't hear it, but it just makes, all right, it's not the end of the world. Paragraph 4A, should that be paragraph 5? Discuss zoning regulations in town on how they would be beneficial. That, That's a-
I think it was an offshoot of the snowstone discussion,
Direct relation to that topic, yeah.
like it was this evening.
okay. All right, that's all I have then.
Okay, I have down at Old Business, the Pocket Park, a couple of changes, I believe, Bill, on number 3, regarding the parking. I think there's just 3 spaces there currently. We talked about 8 in the design. 8, and then maybe even more than 8, but I think there's just 3 if you got small cars, 2 really.
Yeah, I guess beyond the 8 spaces that are there in the current plan, I guess.
In the current
Yeah,
design.
current design.
But is that what it said? Was 8 used at the meeting?
I did mention it. That was the stakeholders. I mentioned that the stakeholders suggested 8 spots there. And then Byron afterwards said, if you want more, here are some ideas. So, okay, so maybe just some attribution there that's from the design. And then the last line, the committee plans to bring the proposal to the full board. I'm not sure who the committee is. I would say the stakeholders and the public plan to bring a proposal to the full board. I'm still working with the stakeholders, and then I'm going to have a public meeting or 2 if we ever get past COVID. So anything else, anyone? Howard, you okay with those
Yes.
changes? Sherman, you okay with the changes?
Yes.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the minutes as amended, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. It is 7:57 and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn
I
until
so
December
moved.
6th. Okay,
I'll second it.
second. Okay, December 16th. We'll see everyone again.